Hello and welcome to another Crypt How-To Series webcast. In this session, we're going to cover product classifications in SAP GTS. All right, my name is Jeff Collins. I am a solution architect with Krypt. And today we're going to cover some of the methodologies, mechanics, and applications of product classifications in the SAP GTS system. So the agenda is going to include a summary, an overview of Krypt, who we are, background and theory of what we're looking to cover, and then practical applications. So once we've classified products, we'll talk about the uses of classification and what that means. How do we, in turn, use that in our trade processes? And so we'll look at how we manage the content, upload the content, the methods of classifying products, so classifying using catalog functionalities, using phonetic searches. We'll talk about reclassifications and mass classifications. We'll look at duty comparisons. And then again, we'll give a couple examples in the system of how we would use a compliance classification and a customs classification. So in summary, we're going to talk about how to manage the product classifications in SAP GTS. How do I classify my SKUs, maintain the content, and apply that to my trade processes. Okay, a little bit about us. Who is Krypt? So Krypt is an industry-leading SAP supply chain and logistics VAR partner. So we're a value-added reseller for SAP. We focus on customer supply chain solutions, systems integrations, and business process improvements for our customers. We really focus on customer success in the areas of revenue recognition, cost savings, process improvements, and compliance. The majority of our customers do become reference and/or repeat customers, and we are definitely thought leaders in the supply chain space. So the Crypt Ecosystem is really what makes us a strong competitor in the supply chain arena. So many of our staff members, such as myself, have worked for SAP, and our experience includes not just supply chain experience, but experience across industry verticals, business knowledge, regulatory knowledge, and a technical aptitude of the applications. So we have offices in the U.S. and Bangalore, India, so we're really well positioned to provide integration services and application expertise to customers worldwide. All right, overview. Since I'm not sure of the expertise of the audience here, I'm going to start with a high-level overview of the SAP and GTS architecture, and then we'll dive into product classifications, mechanics, and the application of how we apply those. Okay, a high-level system landscape flow. So this is going to show master data and process integrations. So GTS is a standalone instance, and it can integrate to a multitude of back-end systems. In this example, it is integrating with an ECC system, and we're passing data, import data and export data, and you can see down here that the end result is an electronic communications to the customs authorities or to a broker or to a forwarder, so essentially an EDI communication. So we're going to talk about classification and how that applies to these transactional trade-related processes, so compliance controls, customs management, preference management. Okay, before initiating an import or an export process, we have to make sure that our goods are properly classified. Now, classify refers to the official numbers and schema that are assigned to our products. So this really could be considered the language of international trade. So we'll cover some details of the regulations and the schemes used later in the presentation. This slide shows the classification, HTS, ECCN, Schedule B, etc., being sent to the GTS system kind of prior to any transactional processing. So upstream of maintaining compliance controls or sending communications to the customs authorities or determining preferential qualifying or non-qualifying materials for preferential free trade agreements, those types of things. We want to load our products and load our classification in the system, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Okay, so the GTS application is really designed to use the classification for, again, compliance management, customs processing, and trade preference. But there's also other uses for the classification tool and some industry-specific examples which customers have found uses for by using the SAP GTS application. So the standard uses include the identification, using it to identify controlled products, and we'll talk a little bit about the BIS and the export admin regulations, the ability to present the customs tariff to the customs authorities and determine the duty rates for particular import, and then again, identification of qualifying and non-qualifying products for preferential free trade agreements. The export customs classification is used primarily by the U.S. and EU for statistical purposes. The import tariff schedule is used to identify a product for customs clearance and is used in determining what duties should be applied for that import into that country. And we'll show you in the system demo what that looks like in terms of having those tariff schedules, like fully qualified numbers, applied to each individual country uniquely, but managed on a single screen. Okay, export customs filings can occur in really a multitude of ways. So GTS can be used to electronically self-file with the customs authorities, or information can be provided to a freight forwarder on behalf of the exporter of record. And then we can see some of the methods here. So we can send that either a hard copy, an email, a fax, or an EDI communication. Okay, import customs filing being similar, that we can send that electronically to the customs authorities, or we can send that to an import broker on behalf of the importer of record. And again, there's a multitude of methods which the application supports sending that information. Okay, classification setup in GTS, and again, we're going to see this, but it's really driven off what's called legal regulations in GTS. And if we look at this example, and we're just using US examples, but keep in mind that this is a global application and we can support regulations worldwide. But in this example, we have the EAR, which is the Bureau of Industry and Security, the Export Admin Regulation. And the classification schema is ECCN, so the Export Classification Control Numbers is assigned to that regulation and therefore assigned to a country, in this case would be the US, so that we can manage those controls. So materials departing from the U.S., we can apply these rules and what's known as the Commerce Control List and identify whether or not we're exporting controlled or non-controlled products. Does it need a license or an exception? And we can see up here in the right corner the breakdown of what those export classification numbers, what it means, and how the government expects you to apply that classification to a particular product. So whether that product is an electronic product, encrypted pharmaceutical, etc., that number will help identify the characteristics of that product. Okay, same thing for Department of Commerce, we have the export control number. For Department of State, we have the United States Munitions List, or USML, and that would be assigned to the ITAR regulation. And that would be in support of identifying DSP licenses in the system. And agreements as well. Okay, so GTS can effectively manage global customs clearance using the customs classification. So again, using the U.S. as an example, we can manage customs clearance for the local authorities around the world, but in this case, it's a U.S. example. And we look at the regulation ACE, so Automated Customs Environment. And that has a USHTS numbering scheme assigned to that. So now we can upload and manage those fully qualified tariff schedules for the products that exist in our system. And we can maintain that for the USHTS, in this example, the German tariff. So the 10-digit US number, the 11-digit tariff, 8-digit Brazil number, etc. So all of that is just a matter of assigning those schemes to a regulation and maintaining those numbers. Okay, content is very important. The content provider is very important. While there's more than one content provider to choose from, we typically work closest with the Carte, aka Customs Info. And the content here relates to core competency. So SAP's job is to develop industry-leading software solutions. Crypt's job is to provide business and systems integration services and expertise in deploying the SAP applications. The Carte is an industry leader in the data mining space. So their focus is to work with the multitude of government agencies to extract and package worldwide data that are used in these global trade processes. So they provide in an XML format that works with the SAP GTS application, data that supports preferential free trade agreements, denied party lists, tariff schedules, export control numbers. And they are, again, the experts in that space. And then the application leverages and uses that information. Okay, we're going to jump into system demo. Way more exciting than a PowerPoint slide. So in that demo, we're going to talk about the content management, the XML uploads. We're going to look at the product classification methods. So how do we classify a single product or mass products, and utilize some of the features and tools available, such as phonetic search and number lookups. We'll also look at their classification work list, so how to identify products that require classification in the system, and mass classifications, product catalog capabilities, so the ability to see what products have a particular classification in the existing system, and duty rate comparisons. So kind of we'll walk through somewhat of a pseudo landed cost model. And then ultimately the application. So once we've classified our products, how does that then relate to the trade processes? Okay, so we're going to slide over to GTS now. So again, if you recall, this is an integrated application. This is our GTS instance. We don't have the ERP instance up for this demo because our products have already been transferred and they exist in the system. Some are classified, some are not. So now we'll talk about some of those tools. Now, since the tools are very similar in with regards to the classifying products for compliance versus customs, we're going to stay primarily in the customs management because I think that since the concepts are the same, there's no need to go into both. So if we'll go into the customs management cockpit classification, and we start off our classification master data. So we can maintain our own data, or we can get the data from the content provider. And that really depends on the variation and how many products you're dealing with in particular. So most customers will work with us. We can provide the content that comes from the Carte, and that gets uploaded in the system for an XML file. So the 96 chapters USHTS, those files would upload into the system, and it would have the associated text files and duty rates and OGA information as well. So we can look here and see an upload log. And we can see that we've already uploaded some files in the system. Those XML files have been uploaded, and it tracks that what information we've put into the system already. Okay, we're going to start off with worklist capabilities. So this is a great feature. New products have been added. They've been automatically transferred from your back-end system, so very hands-free operation. Now we need to identify, well, what products are over here that aren't classified, and I can do that via products classification work list. And I can do that for export, import, customs, and compliance. In this case, I want to know what products are in my system that for my US regulation, import tariff numbers currently have no classification value. So this gives me a work list, and I know what that I have to go out at some point and classify these products. And I have a multitude of options here for classifying. I can use my mass classification. So if I have a group of products that are the same commodity that I know require the same classification, I can mass classify those with the click of one button. Very simple. I can select one or multiple products here and do a single product classification. And in this case, we are going to, I'm actually going to come back out of here as I want to show the concept of the global classification. So in this case, we're going to go into classify a single product. Okay, we're going to select our back-end system. We're going to put in product number. Classification. Now, I didn't identify a specific regulation, so I can see here that if my product was classified in Canada or Mexico or Switzerland, I can see those values and identify its classification. In this case, I'm going to remove this classification for demo purposes. And we'll talk about the different methods now. Okay, so we have the ability to go look up a number, or I can use a phonetic search. An example of that we'll put in here. Since this is a polarizing filter, I can put in the word polarizing. And it'll bring up a series of numbers. So it's looking at the text files that are uploaded with the XML files associated to that product, to those classifications. So that would be official descriptions and commercial descriptions. You can identify specifically what text attributes you want to look at for your phonetic searches. Okay, the other capability is simply the number lookup. All right, now I know this falls into Chapter 90. So I'm going to come over here to Optical, Photographic, Cinematographic. Got it. That was a tough one. Okay, Chapter 90. Now I have a multitude of capabilities in here as well. So what I want to do is I want to do a comparative analysis. And I'm going to look at this classification, and I'm going to use this pin to remember that number. And it's going to bring it down into a clipboard for me. All right, and I want to look at this one. I'm going to clipboard that. And I'm going to clipboard one more. Okay, now I can use product catalog feature, but I'm going to show you that separately. Meaning what other products in my system share this classification value. That also helps me in determining what classification value I might need for that particular commodity. In this case, I want to do a quick duty rate analysis. Kind of a pseudo landed cost here. So we're going to, this is going to be a product importing into the US, and we're sourcing this from China. And now I can see that my duty rates importing these classifications from China would be X%, depending on the fully qualified tariff schedule. Now, in this case, the sheets and plates of polarizing material is the proper classification, so we would expect to pay the 3.5% duty rate. And I can now select that, save that, and now I can see I have a U.S. tariff schedule. I've classified that product. Okay, display the product catalog, which I've referenced a couple times. So I want to go look and see what products may exist for a particular classification. Do that for the U.S. And U.S. import, we'll take this number here. And then I can go in the system and see that for that tariff schedule, I have a couple ball bearings, a radial bearing and a ball bearing. So if my commodity is a particular type of bearing that may require the same classification, I can see that I may have similar products in my system with that value. Okay, reclassification. So the mass classification and reclassification are very powerful tools in the system. So I can reclassify products manually. And what that means is if I have a regulatory change, like we did in 2012, for example, I can go in and put the old tariff schedule and the new tariff schedule. And if there are 100 products that are affected, with one click, it's going to reclassify those products. So we'll show you what that looks like real fast. All right, and let's see, let's use this number. Okay, so in this example, there are 2 products that have that tariff schedule, the old value, and if we were to start reclassification, we would immediately assign that new value to those products. And so very, very powerful tool. All right, I want to end this session with talking about the application of these classifications real quick. And I want to go back to compliance. And let's just look at an example of an export license or export license exception where it would be, it would heavily rely on my product classification. All right, so we look at an example license here or a license exception. I can see that control class is one of my attributes. So products with this classification departing from the U.S. that meet this other criteria, such as kind of the country of destination or fall within valuation parameters for depreciation, will get assigned to this license. And of course, these are the line items within a document. They get assigned to this particular license or exception. So that would be used for compliance. Now, for customs, we're going to go into the customs management. Let's go look at import. Let's just display a number of things here. All right, and for import, let's just pick, we'll pick this guy. And of course, for an import, we would expect to see this is a U.S. import, we would expect to see the tariff schedule, and we do. We see an HTS. And that gets used in what we discussed earlier, the communication methods. So the electronic communication to the U.S. Customs Authority, or information I can send to my broker through fax, print, email, etc. So that would be some examples of how I would use my customs classification. Everything essentially ties together and supports these fully integrated import and export processes. So with that said, again, my name is Jeff Collins. We're going to wrap this up. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at Krypt. We would be more than happy to answer your questions. And I appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for attending.